Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another beginner's guide. Today we're going to walk you through the shop and items. I know it's a lot to take in, and some of you have probably never played the game before, and if you have, there's probably a lot of changes since the last time you played, because a lot of people are coming back to the game right now, so I'm going to try to make it easier for you guys to understand. Also, if you have other types of guides you would love to see, don't forget to leave a comment down below, and maybe I'll make it. Okay, so the shop and the items. First of all, down here on the left, you can see your items. You have 8 slots unlocked when you get into the game. These slots can be filled with any type of item. You can fill them with spirit items, vitality items, or weapon items. And then you notice there are 4 slots that are locked, and you can actually hover over them to see how to unlock them. Basically, it's about unlocking various objectives around the map. The first one is destroying 3 enemy guardians, then it's 3 enemy walkers, and then there's 1 enemy walker, and then there's the first set of base guardians. So that means that you can have a total of 12 slots. You can buy 12 greens if you want. You can buy 12 spirit items. You can basically customize your experience to how you want to play your hero. But how do you play your hero? So if you've never played a hero before, or if you're just trying to get better at a hero, what I do recommend doing is to find a build guide. So there's a lot of people that make good builds in this game. You can search for some of the top streamers. You have Deathy, Ido, me, Parzelian. There's a bunch of streamers, a bunch of creators who spend lots of time learning the game and finding various guides. If you, for instance, want to use my guides, they will always have twitch.tv/AverageJonas.
Choice I would gladly make again.
And then the name of the build after. So you can basically open the build browser and search for AverageJonas, and then it would instantly show up here. And I have builds for over half of all the characters in the game, so if you're not sure, feel free to always search them up. Most of my builds are very beginner friendly, so that could be a good place to start. So when playing a hero, you have to decide how you want to play it. And this is where it gets a little bit complicated, because every hero can technically be played as a tank, as a weapon damage dealer, or a spirit damage dealer. Some are better than others at some things, but that's what we're going to talk about right now. So for instance, if you take a hero like Paradox, she has a few interesting abilities. So this is where you always have to check what your abilities do. And one thing you have to pay close attention to are these purple squares around the abilities, because those show how much your abilities scale with types of items. So for instance, if I press tab right now and hover over my pulse grenade, you'll see that my pulse damage is 40. But you can also say that it says a little purple star, and then it says X 0.43. So what this means is that for every point of spirit power I get, my pulse grenade's damage will increase by 0.43. So that means that this ability is only affected by how much spirit power I have. But Kinetic Carbine, however, this is a very interesting one, because the Carbine build is the most popular Paradox build. And the interesting thing about the Carbine build is actually that it scales from weapon damage. So you'll notice there is actually a orange square around the max damage. It says 65 right now, but if I buy any weapon item and we hover over it again, now it says 78. And this can sometimes be confusing, which is why it's very important to just read all the abilities closely. For instance, it's interesting that Paradox's ult, grenade, they both scale with spirit, but the wall doesn't. And the reason why the wall doesn't is because when you have the wall upgraded twice, it actually does 9% of max health damage, meaning that it's technically on scale throughout the game because people get more health anyway. So that's why the first thing you have to do is just decide, how do I want to play my character? Do I want to play like a carry where I'm focusing on shooting my gun, or do I want my abilities to do more damage? And then if you want the easy solution, you try to just find builds that have what you are searching for. So for instance, you can see, okay, this one says intro to bomb. Okay, so you select this one. Okay, now this one selects a build order. And you can also queue up the build, which I recommend doing, but I would not turn on auto buy. And the reason for that is I still want you to read what the items do. If you just turn on auto buy, it's one of those things where you can sometimes just turn off your brain and just buy from left to right. And I think another problem with that is that sometimes you have to buy counter items, which we're going to go more into depth on later. And I also might make a full video on how to counter every hero in the game. If that's something you're interested in, let me know. I might do that, but that will require a full video. Anyway, so this is what a build looks like. This one is a little bit messy. It's a lot of shit going on here. But some of these builds, they do have This one is pretty more straightforward, but I don't have too many annotations on this one. If that is something you guys want, I can also get better at adding annotations to them. So when you buy items from the different categories, you can notice at the bottom left that these bars fill up. So the way it works is that the more souls you spend in a category, the more weapon damage you get, or health you get, or spirit power you get. Which is interesting because if you look at an item like Superior Cooldown, you're like, okay, it's a spirit item, it's got 3.2k, it costs 3.2k souls, and it gives me regen and some cooldown reduction, but it doesn't give me any spirit power. But it does, because when you buy it, now you got 19 extra spirit power from buying more items in that category. And this goes all the way up to spending 28,000 souls in one category. So for quite a while. But this is something to think about very late in the game, because you will get to a point after maybe 30 to 40 minutes where buying an extra item in a category is actually not going to give you the same amount of boosts or benefits as if you had fewer items. For those of you who don't want to follow a guide and experiment yourself, I will say it's a lot harder, but it's one of those things where you will also learn a lot more. So what I did when I started, there wasn't really any builds because I was one of the first people who were playing the game. So it's kind of just like exploring on my own. But what I do now is if I'm trying to learn a hero that I haven't really played a lot before, I would like whip out someone's guide who I know has played it a lot. And then I'll play with it a few times and I'll be like, I didn't feel like I wanted to have this item here. And I didn't want to, like, this item doesn't suit my play style. Or for instance, some of you might not want to have 4 active items because that's a lot to take in. The first thing you have to figure out is, how am I going to survive the laning stage? And there are a few things you have to think about here. One of them is how much health regen you have. And there's a few very crucial items. One of them is extra regen, this is one of those set and forget items. It just passively increases your health regen. And also, because it costs 800 souls, it also gives you 8% extra health. Then you have Healing Rite, which is an interesting one. This one doesn't give you an increased regen, but it's one of those, when you're low on health, you can buy this item, you pop it, and it heals you over time for 300 health. But if you take damage, it gets cancelled. So this is one of those items that can be good to buy, and then go smash some boxes nearby, because boxes can have souls in them. Or simply just hide while your laning opponent does all the last hits. One thing that is important to think about with the Healing Rite is that unless you're a support, which will later upgrade it to Healing Nova, Rescue Beam, and Healing Tempo, this is probably not an item that you will be keeping throughout the entire game. Which is why this is an item that you can consider as an item that costs 400 souls. I've seen many players who won't buy Healing Rite and rather go back to the base. And then they lost maybe 400 souls from missing a wave, right? Because a single wave is enough to actually make this item worth it. That's why one of my recommendations also is, unless you have speed boost, which is around 6 minutes, do not go back to base if you have enough souls to buy Healing Rite. Just buy the item and heal yourself up, and then you can just sell it later, and you've only lost 400 souls, but you didn't actually lose it because you would have lost those souls if you went back to the base anyway. Another good laning item is Resto Shot. This is the highest amount of healing you can get from an item as long as you use it on cooldown and as long as you can aim. Because this one heals you when you shoot NPCs and orbs, and it heals you a lot if you shoot heroes. For shotgun characters, it needs to be the center pellet as well. So you used to be able to buy this on shotgun characters and just instantly easily heal. That's not the thing anymore. It needs to be the center pellet. But I will say this is one of the strongest laning items in the game, and because it's a weapon item, it also gives you weapon damage. So this is a nice alternative to monster rounds. Speaking of monster rounds, it's also a great laning item. It just helps you shove the lane faster. So sometimes you're playing against people who are shoving the lane on you really hard, like a McGinnis or a Magician. Someone is like just absolutely shoving the lane faster than you. Then the monster rounds can really help you kind of neutralize that. Also, you take less damage from the waves, and this NPC stat also applies to objectives. It means you're doing more damage to the Guardian, and you take less damage from the Guardian. So yeah, very good item, and since it upgrades to Cultist Sacrifice, which is an item that a lot of builds have, it's not a bad item either. So yeah, that's mainly the laning items. One thing I also forgot to mention is that in terms of knowing when to buy cheap or expensive items, there's a few things to have in mind. If you're confident that you're already like winning your lane really easily, You can be greedy and try to save up for some bigger items, for instance. There are some items, for instance, like Trophy Collector, which I personally love. Is an item that technically it's better the earlier to get it because you can start building stacks earlier. And I love my stacks. But it's also a dangerous item to buy because you're spending 3,200 souls and almost no stats. So until you get a lot of stacks on it, it kind of is an item that isn't very good. Not just kind of, but I've had some games where I play support heroes like Paradox and Dynamo who don't really need a lot of farm to do well because they have really strong abilities and ults. And then getting an early trophy collector and starting to roam can be really good. One thing to have in mind and something to think about is that sometimes, let's say you're playing a Bebop and you're saving up for the Echo Shard. And then suddenly you're holding maybe 4,000 souls on you and you're saving for, you need 2,400 souls more. Now this is a terrible time to go fighting. And why is that? It's because you can press tab, right? And you can see that, oh, the enemy is worth, let's say 6,000 or 8,000 souls. And you are also worth 6,000 to 8,000 souls. But there's one difference. They have bought all their items. They've spent all their souls. So the actual effective soul value can be 2 to 3 times higher on the enemy team. So knowing when you should be aggressive and when you should be passive is really smart. And that also applies to unsecured souls. Because sometimes when you're saving up for, especially if you're trying to be greedy and save up for a big item, you're probably jungling a lot. So make sure you don't really play aggressive at all if you have a lot of unsecured souls, because you will lose them if you die, and it really sucks. So always tell yourself, I have a lot of unsecured souls. I should not be fighting. I need to buy my item first. Very smart. You think I'm joking, but I've played in Eternus lobbies where this happens. So just like actively tell yourself, actively just manifest like, I have 1,000 unsecured souls. I'm telling this to myself to not go gank and potentially die. Next up, I want to talk a little bit about itemizing in games in general. So once you're in a game, you can press tab. And once you press tab, you can look at these bars and you can actually see what bars every team player and enemy player has. And the reason why this is important is that, first of all, as a full team, you want to have a combination of weapon and spirit damage. And you also want someone who's a frontliner. That means that someone on your team should be focusing on greens, someone on your team should be focusing on weapon, and someone on spirit. So if you play a hero that can kind of flex into either way, you could play Bomb Paradox, for instance. You could play Carbine Paradox, which is, this one does a lot of weapon damage. This one does a lot of spirit damage. You have the option to choose what's more recommended to do for your team. That's one thing. The other thing, which I think a lot of people don't do, is that you can look at the enemy and you can see, wow, they have so much weapon damage. Maybe I should buy bullet resilience. And melee damage is also bullet damage, by the way, in case you didn't know that. So using this to decide whether or not you buy bullet and spirit resilience can be very smart. Another way of doing that is also, I don't know how to bring that up right now, but on your right side here on the screen, when you die, there is a recap setting. Oh wait, it's this thing. Here you go. This thing. Okay. So now the recap shows, oh, wow. All the damage I've been taking is melee damage. Okay, what can I do with that piece of information? Okay, I can either build bullet resilience, I'll take less damage from them, or even use the search function and type melee resist, and it shows all the items that have melee resist. This is just a good thing to learn in general. Also a friendly tip, by the way, if you play against a lot of melee characters, buy this item. Literally, you parry someone once and this item has like already made back its value. It's incredibly strong. Not only does it lower your parry cooldown, when you parry them, you get healed for the damage they did to you, and you have a buff that deals 50% more melee damage for 6 seconds. I don't know how many times I've like just gotten parried by someone as a rebuttal. I'm like, I'm dead. So yeah, so use this search function, can be very helpful. This incoming damage thing can help you a lot, and it's smart to set it to last 10 minutes because that gives you an idea of what has been happening in the last 10 minutes and what you need to buy to counter it. Sometimes you might not even know that you've been taking tons of spirit damage, and there will be like a percentage counter at the top. So in general, if you've been taking 60-70% damage of only one of the types and it's not really that balanced, then, you know, get in here and buy Spirit Resilience. These two items, by the way, are really good in general. There's almost never a bad situation to buy these items. So if you're uncertain, I would just say buy these items. There are also a few very strong counter items. There is Counter Spell. This item, by the way, you can block a Lash ult. You can take no damage from Doorman ult by parrying while you drop down. You can use Debuff Remover to remove Bebop bombs. You can remove 7 stun. You can remove Warden Cage. So sometimes I know it's scary to have active items, but they give you so much extra leeway for countering a specific playstyle, which is why I highly recommend just take your time and actually read the items. It's okay to follow a build, that's fine, but try to actually read what the build does. Like, try to read what items are actually in the build, and also like try to think to yourself, why is this item here? What is the deal? Try to just like, and if that's hard for you, you can come to my stream and ask. I stream every day on Twitch. You can always come and ask, and I'll try my best to give you an answer. Another advice I have is to change some of the keybinds for active items. I feel like the original keybinds for, I think it's X and Z, are a little bit hard to reach, at least for me. So I changed them to E and mouse 4 because E is actually not in use as far as I know. So that's just a friendly tip for me. You don't have to follow it, but this really helped me. Getting one of the active items on the mouse button helped me to make things less overwhelming. When I was playing a lot of double bomb bebop, it required a lot of button pressing. You have to press hook, uppercut, bomb, echo shard, bomb, silence glyph. Now, that's a lot of things at once. But then I was like, okay, what if I move the silence glyph over to my mouse button that is mostly focusing on aiming and shooting? It actually made it much easier for me to overcome this kind of barrier, because there was a while where I would only play with 3 active items, and going up to 4 would just like make me not use any of them. You know what I mean? It's like you have like this kind of mental block of like how many total amount of buttons you can press. So don't be scared. Just start with 1 active item, move up to 2, and then go from there. The last thing I wanted to talk about is cast settings. So if you go to keybinds and you go to default settings, there are some cast settings here. One thing I highly recommend is putting all your items to instant casts and most abilities to quick cast or instant cast. So if you've never played Deadlock before, it will normally do, so I'll show you an example here.
This is dangerous work. Fortunately, I'm dangerously handsome.
Same, bro, same. Normally, this one would be ability default, right? So what that would mean was that to cast your Frost Grenade, you have to press 1 and then press your mouse click.
There they are!
Now that is, for anyone who's played other MOBAs, you're probably very familiar with what quick casting is, but it can get pretty annoying to have to do an extra left click because it takes a lot longer. So there are 2 options. One of them, to just set it to instant cast. When you set it to instant cast,
Bombs out!
I just press 1 and it casts it where the mouse button is. On most abilities, that's absolutely fine, okay? But there are some exceptions. Frost Grenade and Kelvin ult being 2 of them. And that is that you don't see the radius it's going to hit now. It doesn't show the ground indicator anymore. See that? So what I recommend doing is whenever there's an ability that requires you to aim at the ground or have some sort of indicator, you set it to quick cast. When it's set to quick cast, what happens is I press 1 and now I'm holding 1. And while holding 1, it shows where the ability is going to land. And then I'm not even clicking. I'm just letting go of 1. And then it casts it. That's what quick cast does. And this can also be useful for instance, a lot of new Kelvin players, they don't really know how big the dome is. Especially because throughout the game, you get more range items. So now I can press 4 and then I can see how big it is. And just to give you guys an idea of why this is important to learn is if I buy a lot of range items, this, because they both have ability, and once again, ability range. See that? You can just search it up.
I don't go selling these
Okay,
to just anyone.
so watch this. Now you'll notice, you see how much bigger that is? This is why sometimes it can be very helpful to have this kind of quick cast setting on in the beginning until you're more familiar with using the different abilities and items. However, with items,
me.
I do recommend just setting them all to instant cast because most of the items are either just click or they're supposed to just be applied to the enemy target or a friendly target. And in all those cases, it's completely fine to use instant cast. And one more thing, I highly recommend changing alternate cast mode. So what this basically is what we call, in a lot of cases, it's called self-casting. It's to cast the bebop bomb on yourself instead of the enemy. It's to send the dormant cart on a friendly target instead of enemy, and so on. So I'm not sure what the default setting is, but I highly recommend using alternate cast button just because it has less delay. So I'll explain why I don't think press and hold and double tap is good. Press and hold is a problem in some cases because it actually adds more delay. That means that let's say that you have to cast an ability really fast. Well, now the game is actually waiting for you to hold down the button before it's going to decide whether or not you're casting it on an enemy or yourself. So we don't want that. The problem with double tap is that sometimes you are in a situation where you are stunned or crowd controlled or an ability is on cooldown. What do? You do this.
The chase is on.
You start spamming your buttons, right? You start spamming your buttons really, really fast to try to like cast the ability as soon as possible. So what happens? Well, it's gonna self-cast because you have self-cast double tap. So my recommendation is set an alternate cast button and I'll show you what happens. Okay, so now I'm just pressing 2 like that, right? And when I want to self-cast, I just hold my mouse to. Now it shows up. See that? Now it shows up bomb self as soon as I hold this one. So now I hold this one and press the same ability. And now I cast out myself. For more advanced combos, this is a lot easier to do because sometimes, for instance, if you play bomb bebop, for instance, you always have an echo shard. And that's why some people struggle with these kind of combos. So let's say you echo shard your bomb, right? Imagine that you now have double tap or hold. And you're going to cast 2 bombs on yourself. You guys see what I mean? Then you would have to double tap for a little bit of delay, then press echo shard, then double tap again. Or you'd have to hold and then echo shard and hold. But when you have the alternate self-cast button, you can do the exact same combo that you do on your enemies. So now I'm just holding this.
You got yourself a little problem.
And it just self-casts both of them super easy. So that's my recommendation. Okay, that was it for today's item and shop guide. I hope this helped. If you have any questions, feel free to drop by my stream. And once again, if you have any guides you would really like to see or questions you really want answered, let me know in the comments and I'll try my best to help you guys out. I know a lot of you guys are coming back to Deadlock right now, and it makes me really happy because, you know, I went full-time on this game a year ago. I've played about 2,700 hours of Deadlock in 1 year, and I believe this game has a great future. And I really want to be part of it. And I really want to help cater to a beautiful community and make a lot of awesome guides for you guys. But yeah, don't forget to click the subscribe button. Maybe drop a like if you enjoyed it. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.